Welcome to Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible, where I pull from Warhammer 40k lore to help explain biblical lore. And today we're going to be going over Sebastian Yarrick, one of my favorite characters. But before we get into the video, take the wikis with a grain of salt. And I am not a lore expert, and I do regular biblical videos on Mondays. Every Thursday will be this series, and every Saturday is a Christian Nerd Reacts as well. And then I do a comedy series within the bolt gun game, and it's called Rise of Space Marine Dude. And the newest episode was released yesterday, so if you want to check that stuff out. The past 3 or 4 of them have been really good, in my opinion. But anyways, and if I've earned a like and subscription, please consider doing so. Let's go ahead and get started. Sebastian Yarrick, the hero of Hades' Hive, is a Commissar of the Officio Perfectus, famous for his involvement in the Second and Third Wars of Armageddon. Now, the Second War of Armageddon is where he gets this claw from an Ork Warlord, and he lost his arm, and that's replaced it. It's cool. But anyways, I'm sorry. In the last century of the 41st millennium, there he fought against the forces of the Ork Warlord Ghazkull Mag Uruk Thraka. It wasn't this warlord, it was a different guy. But anyways, Yarrick was already old when the war began and was scheduled to retire on the day the Greenskins landed. He possessed an excellent history serving with Armageddon's planetary defense forces and a reputation for unswerving loyalty to the Emperor. In his youth, he had learned the Ork language from a human raider captured by the savage Xenos and was one of the few recognized experts in the Imperium on Ork psychology and culture. Commissar Yarrick is a peerless Imperial hero. During the Second War for Armageddon, Yarrick held Hades' Hive against the Ork hordes of Warlord Ghazkull Thraka, when the city's fall seemed inevitable. As the legends tell, it was this act of stoic defiance that would save the planet, for in Yarrick, the Greenskin warlord finally saw a worthy opponent, a strategist of great cunning, against whom he could test his brutal fury. Ghazkull directed the majority of his forces towards Hades, and joined the battle himself, determined to crush the dauntless Commissar beneath his heel. Yarrick rallied his defenders, and though the casualties were horrific, he managed to hold out until the Blood Angels chapter of the Adeptus Astartes were able to outflank and destroy Ghazkull's hordes. Furious at his defeat, the warlord retreated from the system, ending the Second War for Armageddon. Yarrick's courage and tenacity were an inspiration to his followers, carrying them through hardships untold to eventual victory. It was during the brutal hand-to-hand duel with the hulking war boss Ugulhard in the final battle for Hades' Hive. That's the war boss that he got the claw from. Hades' Hive that Yarrick lost an arm. He took the Ork's head in return, replacing his severed limb with Ugulhard's own power claw. When he lost an eye in a vicious firefight, Yarrick ensured it was replaced with the powerful laser bionic called the Bale Eye, playing to the Ork fear of his supposed evil eye, though his body is a patchwork of scars and bionics. The old Commissar fights unbowed. When Ghazkull's mighty Waaagh returned once more to the planet in 998, the 41st millennium, instigating the Third War for Armageddon, Yarrick came out of a well-earned retirement to lead the planet's defense. None in the Imperium knew the deranged mind of Ork Warlord better. An aged Commissar was able to counter all but the most outlandish assaults devised by the Greenskin Prophet. The cataclysmic and ongoing war that ensued stretched the military capacity of the Adeptus Ministorum to near breaking point. Suffice it to say that, for all the ferocity and ingenuity of the Ork Warlord, Armageddon did not fall. The Imperial forces withstood the invaders, though the planet was transformed into a brutal, unending war zone. Excuse me. Eventually, Ghazkull himself was drawn away by a vision, which he believed was given to him by the green-skinned gods themselves. Unwilling to let his nemesis escape, only to potentially wreak havoc elsewhere in the galaxy, Yarrick ensured that he was among the Imperial forces who gave chase. Without the tireless efforts of Commissar Yarrick, Ghazkull's Wah would have overrun Armageddon long ago and stormed on towards Holy Terra. The Commissar's crusade to slay the beast of Armageddon continued to this day. Alright, get into the history now. Early life. Born on Taos 3 under the name of Sebastian Yarrick, the young Yarrick was orphaned when he was 7 standard years old. Raised by his maternal grandfather in a small community near New Cadenhive, he spent the next 3 years under the loving but harsh tutelage of his old Astra Militarum veteran sergeant, learning how to fight, lay traps, and stay hidden. When the Orks invaded his homeworld, young Yarrick survived alone, hiding from the Greenskins, laying traps, killing Gretchen, foraging, and generally doing everything he could to survive using all the tactics and tricks that his grandfather had taught him. After an Imperial relief flotilla finally arrived in orbit over Taos 3 several solar months later, Astra Militarum regiments were deployed. One squad on patrol picked up a lone 10-year-old boy who there and then took the name of his grandfather, Yarrick, as his surname. Following this, he was taken by the Imperium's Schola Progenium to be educated and indoctrinated like most commissars. He learned the Ork language from a human raider who had once been a prisoner of the Greenskins while fighting the Orks during a war on the world of Varun. Since that time, he has extensively studied the Ork mind and is considered one of the Imperium's leading experts on Orks. His years with the Imperial Guard were eventful ones, and he served in over a dozen war zones and with regiments from Necromunda, Luther McIntyre, and Armageddon. His final assignment before retirement was to run the recruitment program for the rebuilding of the 4th Armageddon Steel Legion Regiment. Second War for Armageddon. As the Second War for Armageddon began, Yarrick been banished to Hades' Hive by Hermann von Straub, the inept planetary governor of Armageddon, of course, after he ordered the planet's astropaths to send a message to the Imperium for help. Von Straub has been described as the greatest waste of flesh and bone born in the last 500 years. Yeah. Anyways, by Precepts Prime, Curtis Menheim of the Legio Metallica Titan Legion. Gradually, under von Straub's incompetent leadership, the planet fell bit by bit until the Orks reached Hades' Hive. Here, Commissar Yarrick commanded the defending forces, inspiring them to fight like the possessed. The Imperial defense was so vicious that eventually Ghazkull himself joined the attack, leading his forces from the front. He tried to deplete the Hive by every strategy he could muster, but Yarrick countered them all. Eventually, Hades' Hive became a personal battle for the two warriors. Ghazkull fell upon the Hive, and Yarrick released that the Imperium defenders could not hold their position. In a series of daring shuttle runs, the remaining Imperial forces managed to escape from the Greenskin trap. In retreat, Yarrick was almost killed, but his iron will allowed him to survive. Eventually, the war ended in the arrival of Commander Dante of the Blood Angels chapter of Space Marines, whom the defenders of Armageddon had turned to for leadership. Siege of Hades' Hive. During the first assault on Hades' Hive of the Second War for Armageddon, the Ork Warlord Ugulhard, one of Ghazkull's most prominent underlings, drove the bulk of his forces towards Yarrick's position and was able to drove the bulk of his forces towards Yarrick's position and was able to engage the elderly Commissars in single combat. Ugulhard quickly used his power claw to sever Yarrick's right arm at the elbow. That's gotta love it. Gotta love the irony. Anyways, the warlord's victory was cut short as Yarrick, fighting the pain and shock like no mortal man, swung his sword and beheaded the Ork warlord who had lowered his guard, believing the Humi to be finished. Yarrick was said to have picked up and brandished the Ork warlord's power claw and eventually had it attached in the place of his right arm, inspiring fear in the orcs and prompting the Imperial defenders to surge forward and leap upon the aliens. Battlefield legend has it that only after the Ork assault was routed from Hades' Hive did Yarrick allow himself the luxury of passing out. News of his incident spread like wildfire amongst the orcs, and whenever Yarrick fought, the green-skinned Xenos would flee in terror. Yarrick exploited this to the full, having Ugulhard's claw modified to suit him as a prosthetic limb. He also exchanged his left eye for a pulse laser bio-implant, playing on the orc superstition that he had an evil eye, as they called him the Bale Eye that could kill with a glance. For 6 solar months following the first assault, the defenders of Hades' Hive held out against further attacks. Although recollections of the siege vary, it was almost ununanimously considered that Yarrick was the man who made it all possible. He was the one who held the defenders together, the one who brought them back from the brink of defeat countless times, and the one whose belief gave others the strength to go on. The time he bought at Hades' Hive, tying up a vast portion of the Ork War and distracting the Ghazkull himself from his ultimate goal, made all the difference, allowing the time for the reinforcing Imperial Guard and Space Marines to muster and launch a counterattack. Yarrick was one of the few survivors of the final battle for Hades' Hive, and it took many solar months for him to recover from the injuries he sustained during that final assault. He accepted nominal retirement and along with training post on Armageddon. However, the knowledge that an orc like Ghazkull was still at large proved too much of a distraction, and only solar months later he reported back for active duty, vowing that he would not rest until the day Ghazkull Mag-Thraka was hunted down and killed. Golgotha. Yarrick attempted to follow through on his oath and set off in pursuit of his nemesis in a game of cat and mouse that lasted for nearly 10 standard years. Ghazkull fled before Yarrick and protected what remained of his forces, only committing to the rearguard actions when necessary. Yarrick attempted to break the deadlock by forcing his opponent down on the once imperial planet of Golgotha. At first, it appeared that Yarrick would finally triumph, as Ghazkull at last committed his forces to open battle. But the tables were turned when it became clear Golgotha was a trap. The moment Ghazkull and his Goths engaged, a second, lesser Wa of orcs hit the humans from behind. Having patiently laid in wait for just that moment, a space Hulk then emerged from behind Golgotha's moon to drive off the Imperial Navy. Ghazkull and his greenskins devastated the Imperial defenders with such ferocity that even the Commissar himself could not stand against it. Despite a ferocious defense and incredible feats of valor, the humans were exterminated to a man, and Yarrick was captured by Ghazkull. Waking up on the Orc Space Hulk, Yarrick found himself bereft of his Biotic Claw and Bale Eye, and hanging in chains above a pit. Ghazkull, who was watching, waited Yarrick to retain full consciousness before sending him plummeting down the chute to the laughter of the orcs present. Landing amongst the refuse of the Hulk, Yarrick was forced to fend for himself against the many squigs scavenging amongst the rubbish. Refusing to be daunted, Yarrick set about hunting the squids and using their massive quills as improvised steps to build a ladder to get back up the waste chute. When he finally managed to do so, several solar days later, Yarrick was surprised to find Ghazkull waiting for him, as if the war boss had known all along the human would make it out alive. Ghazkull then ordered Yarrick thrown amongst the other human slave prisoners on the Space Hulk. Quickly assessing the new situation, Yarrick set about organizing a revolt amongst the human slaves. Since the human work crews were used haphazardly by the orcs as a slave detail, they managed to crudely map a large part of the Hulk in the course of their labors. Yarrick wanted to attack a large structure shaped like an orc's head, believing it was a temple of the orc gods and the Ghazkull would be there, but the other prisoners convinced him to try to escape and warn the Imperium instead. Yarrick reluctantly agreed, and when the time came, one of the workings sabotaged a large orcish ammunition dump, with Yarrick and a dozen other slaves slipping away in the confusion. Alas, escape would prove impossible, for their intended rescue vehicle was in the process of being customized by the Space Hulk's mech boys, leaving the humans stranded on the Hulk. Faced with discovery, the pilot amongst the group sacrificed himself and started the altered spacecraft up anyway, which resulted in another massive explosion and diversion for Yarrick. Left with no other choice, the remaining humans made for the Hulk's temple, actually the Space Hulk's bridge, which each member of the escapees in turn sacrificing themselves to give Yarrick a chance to reach the top of the structure and his hated foe. Yet, at the last, Yarrick would be denied. When he reached the bridge, he found only several mechs manning the stations, whom he quickly dispatched. With the orcs in hot pursuit, Yarrick opted for the last gamble, activating all the systems of the Space Hulk at once in hope of making it tear itself apart due to the stress of such uncoordinated forces. As he gazed out of the bridge's eyes, Yarrick saw massive devastation erupt alongside one side of the Space Hulk, and he commended his soul to the Emperor as it raced toward his position. Days later, Yarrick once again regained consciousness. He stood up, astonished, and even more amazed that his bionics had been returned to him while he slept. Exiting the room, he was greeted by hundreds of orcs who started to cheer him on, while parting away through their ranks. Gotta love the orcs, man. Bewildered, the Commissar followed his escort of greenskins to the closest launch bay, where Ghazkull waited for him in front of an intact shuttlecraft. Yarrick expected to be forced to fight, but Ghazkull merely stepped out of the way, stating to Yarrick that it had been a good fight and that he should now get back to Armageddon and prepare for the orcs' return, for they would soon be launching yet another battle to reclaim Armageddon. Alright, so we're going to finish these two at the end. If you guys don't know, I do the Warhammer 40k lore, then I do biblical lore, and then I do Warhammer 40k at the end as well. So, alright, now we're going to get to the biblical side of things, and we're going to be starting in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 32. Well, starting in verse 32. Anyways, and David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with the Philistines." So they're talking about Goliath here, right? A 13-foot tall giant. Okay. I want you to remember that, okay, because this guy's not fully human. Goliath, and he's got 5 other brothers who are just as tall as him, or even taller, actually. But anyways. And Saul said to David, "Thou art not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servants slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he had defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, The Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion, and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put on a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off of him. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in the shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and drew near the Philistines. And the Philistines came and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh into the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Gotta love it, man. He has that same mindset as Yarrick. Then said David to Philistine, Thou comest to me with the sword, and with the spear, and with the shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, which he did, and I will give the carcass of the host of Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and the wild beasts of the earth, and all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. So, there's a story behind this. So, we heard in Yarrick, the planet Golgotha, right? Well, Jesus was crucified on a hill called Golgotha, and it's called the Hill of the Skull. And it's like this huge skull-looking thing, right? And supposedly this is where the head of Goliath was. And this ain't no just human skull. This is a pretty big skull, right? If you remember, Goliath was 13 feet tall. And not only that, you saw he had 5 smooth stones. He had 5 brothers about the same height or even taller than him. Okay? These aren't normal humans. Let's just say that. But I thought that was kind of cool. Oh, and where I was getting with that is that the same seed that was trying to destroy Jesus, his seed or whatever, so that way he wouldn't be born, he was crucified on top of that. Kind of, because Genesis 3:14 says that, he will be of the seed of the woman, and he will bruise the head of the serpent. So, that's interesting. Anyways. And all the assembly shall know the Lord saveth not with the sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistines arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistines. Gotta love it. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon the face of the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with the sling and with the stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. Oh boy, gotta love it. But it's gonna get even more interesting here, because now he's older, and now he's fighting giants, like actual tribes of giants and stuff like this. So, okay. 2 Samuel 21:15. Or, well, 12 through 15, I should say. Or, you know what? I'll do 17. Okay. And David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son from the men of Jabesh Gilead, which had stolen from the street of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hanged them, when the Philistines had slain Saul in Gilboa. And he brought up from thence the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son, and they gathered the bones of them that were hanged. And the bones of Saul and Jonathan his son buried they in the country of Benjamin and Zelah, in the sepulchre of Kish his father. And they performed all the king commanded, and after that God was entreated for the land. Moreover, the Philistines ready had yet war again with Israel, and David went down and his servants with him, and fought against the Philistines, and David waxed faint. And in Ishbibenob, which was one of the sons, of the giant. So there's a little bit more than just Israel conquering a land. If you notice, all these tribes are right there around Israel. Okay? Why? Why were all these weird, tribes, with giants and whatever else surrounding Israel? Because, anyways, that's a whole nother video. I should even... Okay, so he been girded with the new sword. So in the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear weighed 300 shekels of brass in weight. That's a lot, okay? He being girded with the new sword, thought to have slain David, but Abishai the son of Zeruiah succored him, and smote the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David sware unto him, saying, Thou shalt go no more out with us to battle, that thou quench not the light of Israel. And it came to pass after this, that there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gob. And Sibbecai the Hushathite slew Saph, which was of the sons of the giant. All right, and this giant here, you know what? I'll bring it up right here. This is what it's talking about. So we're going to go to Genesis 6. So, and it came to pass, when men began to multiply in the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God, these sons of God are angels, okay? Or in Enoch calls them the watchers, a specific class, saw the daughters of men that they were fair. And they took them wives all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. So he's saying, you guys got 120 years left before you're all corrupted. Okay, here we go. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And then, I'll bring this up too. Oops. We'll do this one, that's fine. Right, Genesis 3:15. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, talking about the serpent. So let's go right here. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. Huh. Something to think about. I wonder if the beast is the seed of the serpent. Interesting. But anyways, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. And remember, the Golgotha, right? Where Jesus was crucified. Anyways. Alright. Oop, that's not it. Okay. Now I want to read this because this is awesome here. So this is a psalm from David. Psalms chapter 144. Blessed be the Lord my strength, which teacheth my hands to war, and my fingers to fight, my goodness and my fortress, my high tower and my deliverer, my shield, and he whom I trust, who subdueth my people under me. Lord, what is a man, or what is man, that thou takest knowledge of him, or the son of man, that thou makest account of him? Man is like to vanity, his days are a shadow that passeth away. Bow thy heavens, O Lord, and come down. Touch the mountains, and they shall smoke. Cast forth lightning, and scatter them. Shoot out thine arrows, and destroy them. Send thine hand from above. Rid me, and deliver me out of the great waters, from the hand, ready, of the strange children. Huh. I wonder who these strange children are. The Nephilim. Anyways, Genesis 6 and all that. And it wasn't just men either. They did it to the birds, the bees, the trees, everything. Makes you wonder where GMO stuff comes from, right? Genetically modified, because that's what they were doing back then. But anyways, send thine hand from above, rid me, deliver me out of the great waters, from the strange children, whose mouth speaketh vanity, and their right hand is a right hand of falsehood. I will sing a new song unto thee, O God. Upon a psaltery and a instrument of 10 strings will I sing praises unto thee. It is he that giveth salvation unto the kings, who delivereth David his servant from the hurtful sword. Now, these psalms are basically songs, okay, if you don't know. So, rid me and deliver me from the hand of the strange children. There they are again. Whose mouth speaketh vanity, and their right hand is the right hand of falsehood. I think I read that. Oops. Hold on. I'm sorry, guys. No, that's it. I'm sorry. That's actually, they're just saying it again. Okay. Rid me and deliver me from the hand of the strange children, whose mouth speaketh vanity, and their right hand is the right hand of falsehood, that our sons may be as plants growing up in their youth, that your daughters may be as cornerstones, polished after the similitude of a palace, that our garners may be full, affording all manner of store, that our sheep may bring forth thousands and 10,000s of in our streets, that our oxen may be strong to labor, that there be no breaking in, nor going out, that there be no complaining in our streets. Happy is that people that is in such a case, yea, happy is that people whose God is the Lord. And I will say amen to that. Anyway, so we're going to move back into Warhammer 40k lore, and we're going to get into the third Armageddon war. And then, we're going to do Return to Golgotha, and then the third war for Armageddon. However, in a move that surprised friend and foe alike, Ghazkull later released the elderly Commissar, stating to his astonished underlings that good enemies is hard to find. True. Implying he enjoyed the challenge the human posed enough to not want it to end just yet. Yarrick left the Ork Space Hulk orbiting Golgotha in the shuttlecraft his nemesis had provided, but soon returned with the force drawn from the ranks of the Adeptus Mechanicus military forces and the massive weapons known as the Ordinatus Golgotha, and routed the Orks from the world. Ghazkull again escaped the fight another day, and Golgotha would eventually be reclaimed by the Orks, soon before the start of the Third War for Armageddon. The Third War for Armageddon. 15 Terran years to the day after the end of the Second War for Armageddon, Ghazkull Mag Uruk Thraka launched his second attempt to take the high world of Armageddon from the Imperium. The Third War for Armageddon would prove to be a much harder battle for Commissar Yarrick. Yarrick arrived on the planet 2 solar weeks before the invasion began. He agreed to take over total control of all forces on the planet, and his first order was to send all remaining Imperial aircraft to destroy as many of the Orks as possible before they could touch the ground. Eventually, the Orks landed their rocks, providing them with pre-built fortresses made from hollowed-out asteroids. Yarrick personally led the assault on one of these with a force of Cadian shock troopers. Eventually, the Orks were pushed out of the Armageddon system when Ghazkull fled Armageddon and the Black Templars prepared to give chase. Yarrick petitioned High Marshal Helbrecht to allow him to join their quest. Helbrecht agreed, and Yarrick immediately set off. Alright, now, the report of death. In the Era Indomitus, a report of Divisio Mortis of the Officio Perfectus was spread through the various Imperial war zones and forwarded to Terra that claimed that Sebastian Yarrick had been slain. Though it offered no details on the cause of death, the Bell of Lost Souls in the Imperial Palace was wrong for him, though the truth of the matter has not been or yet been resolved. So, interesting. But we're going to end it there, guys. I want to thank you all for your support, all my subscribers, everybody who watches the videos. This is all done because of you guys. You guys keep pushing it, and you guys are awesome. Just keep sharing, liking the videos. If you want something covered, go ahead and tell me in the comments on what you would like me to talk about, and I'll see if I can, what I can find for that. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day.